Okay. So before I introduce our guests, let's go around and each of you, if you would, please just say briefly who you are, what city you're in, and what you're hoping to get from the discussion tonight. So David, why don't you start?
David Scher, I'm from Baltimore. Don and I have known each other for years from our synagogue at Beth Am. I'm not sure what I want to get from this tonight. Maybe some things that validate some of the things I've been through. And, maybe I have things to contribute that, what has really helped me with retirement started off very difficult and now has really gotten much better.
Oh, good. All right. And Jeff, I have you on mute right now, but if you can unmute and tell us a little bit about where you're coming from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. Yes, I'm Jeff Crane from Shreveport, Louisiana, and Don and I went to high school together. And as far as what I hope to get out of this is possibly what others, how they define retirement, because I'm still staying pretty darn busy and in totally different areas that I did not expect, which is fine, certainly not complaining. But, it's sort of interesting to see how everybody is necessarily defining their own retirement,
Okay. Thanks. And I'm going to now introduce our guests. Marianne Oehser has retired twice after spending over 40 years doing corporate things, and she is a seasoned relationship and retirement expert and committed to helping people find happiness in their post-career phase of life. She's got a Master of Management, and she is the author of Your Happiness Portfolio for Retirement. It's Not About the Money. Her partner, Susan Latremoille, spent about 35 years as a wealth advisor assisting clients to financially plan for their retirements. But along the way, she found out that it was the non-financial side that had the greatest impact on what made for a successful retirement. She is a certified retirement coach as well as an MBA and has written several books. Most recently, she is co-author of Thriving Throughout Your Retirement Transition. We are honored to have both of them here tonight to answer questions and try to explain a little bit about what retirement is, what it can be, and what a retirement coach might be able to do for you. Did either of you want to add something to that I left out?
No, sounds good. I'm sure other things will unfold as we go along.
I expect that they will. Okay.
I just want to say, Don, if I could, Susan and I are almost clones of each other because I'm a retired Morgan Stanley financial advisor and did plenty of retirement plans. So
interesting.
Good.
Okay, and Jeff, by the way, is in a retirement or senior housing based business. And that's as much as I understand about it. And maybe he can explain later. I guess the first question that I want to ask you guys, and then David and Jeff and others who come in can ask their own questions, but just to get it started off, is it okay to retire if you don't know what you want to do next?
I'll take that one. And I guess I would answer that first by saying it depends on you, the person. Some people do thrive very well when they don't know where they're going and they just kind of make it up as they go along and end up always on their feet. And some people get lost, and then that leads to maybe boredom, isolation, loss of purpose, and it's kind of a downhill spiral. So I guess it depends first to really know what kind of person you are and whether this is going to suit you. But whatever you do, if you've been working for many years, 30, 40 years, it's often a good idea to take a bit of a breather and to take some time just to relax and calm down from maybe the structure and the stress that you might have been under during your career or professional life. And we like to call it the retirement honeymoon, because it's a period of time where you're just so happy. You don't have to get up to the alarm clock. You have no meetings that someone else has put on your schedule, and you can just really kick back and enjoy. But like all honeymoons, it does come to an end, either as soon as maybe 6 months for people that get itchy feet and antsy to do something, or others that stretch it out and feel that they're still on their retirement honeymoon a year and a half later. But sooner or later, that retirement honeymoon ends. And then it's not okay, I believe, at that point, not to have something to go to or a plan to follow. Because we are creatures of habit, we're creatures of structure. And without that, not so good things start to happen. And we've evidenced a lot of that. So I guess bottom line is, yeah, it's okay to retire and not know what you want to do next, but you better be the type that can handle that. And if you're not, then doing some planning is probably a really good idea.
Okay, thank you. David, you want to talk about your own experience? You sort of alluded to that in your introduction.
Okay. Some people are forced to retire. Some people are not. There was a choice of mine. And being a financial advisor, there is the issue with some people is a financial issue. Can you afford retirement? And fortunately, we can. So when I first retired, I didn't have that honeymoon period. I very quickly felt lonely and disconnected and bored. And then the pandemic hit, so that was a double whammy. So it was difficult. I've had I've gone to professionals for help and everything. So that was 3 years ago. Since then, right where I am right now, I have to say no when people ask me to do something, because I've gotten involved in so many things and I love it. I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm volunteer for the Red Cross. I do a lot with our synagogue, Beth Am. I'm a docent at the Jewish Museum. Then I look at my calendar and I'll have an empty day, nothing. I said, what am I going to do? There's so much that I happen to do today. I cut the grass and plant the vegetable gardens. There's always something to do. And then there are times it's okay if I do sit back on, I was going to use a word. Yeah, I could say it. I can sit on my ass and watch TV for a couple of hours too. Fortunately, my wife is also retired. She's very busy with a lot of things post-retirement, but we're with each other quite a bit, and that's good. So what happened to me, it evolved, and so I'm at the point now where I'm mostly happy in retirement. We travel and stuff too, so there's always something that I get interested in, or I'll get lost in some kind of tech problem with my iPhone or some kind of program, and that takes hours and I get obsessed. But anyway, the key for me is to keep moving, but not 24/7.
Okay.
I think there may be something I may eventually want to add, but
Okay.
It was an evolving thing that got me to a good place.
Okay. Suzanne, does that sound like a typical story, or?
There's no typical, but
Oh, good.
David, if it works for you and you've come through the transition and it sounds like you've got lots of meaningful activities rather than just being busy for the sake of being busy. It sounds like the things that you're doing and your wife are doing have purpose and meaning behind them, and they're important to you. And it's nice that it sounds like you've found a nice balance between the work and activities that you do, and then giving yourself permission, as you say, just to watch TV for a few hours or doing something. You don't always have to be productive. So I would say sounds like a very nice balance, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't easy through the transition, especially
No.
with COVID on your doorstep as well.
Well, there are still times where, I'm doing nothing and I feel unmotivated. And that's the way I resolve that is just get up and do something I don't want to do. And then I have the satisfaction that I accomplished something. So,
Yeah, and I can speak to that balance issue also. It has been a problem for me because I went from not having enough to do to feeling like I had too much to do. And it's more a seesaw for me trying to find that place in the middle.
yeah.
Let me put another.
What I did, let me add one more thing, and then
Sure.
I don't want to. I like to talk, so let me just say this. I find that one of my needs is to be social. I love being with people. That's my happy spot, and that comes in a lot of the volunteer stuff I do. Plus, I play golf 3 times a week, and with people, and we have fun. So that's another thing I enjoy.
Yeah,
Can I jump in for a second?
please.
I heard a couple of things, David, that I think are very healthy. First one is, what you just said about loving to be with people and the social aspect of it. That is such an important thing this time of our life, even more so than it ever was in any other period of our time. It has a huge impact on our happiness, certainly, but also on how we age. But it also sounds to me like you're good at organizing it yourself, because unfortunately, sometimes men aren't comfortable with that role, and they depend more on their wife to organize the social part of their world, and that can create some issues. So your wife's lucky that you that you like to do that kind of thing by yourself.
Well, she does organize our vacations and time with us.
Oh, well, sure.
So yeah.
The other really healthy thing I heard is that you and your wife have a good balance. You each have your own activities, but then you come together and do activities together. And that kind of balance is often hard for couples to figure out what works. And the fact that you seem to have done that is, you should be applauded for that.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's not perfect. There are times that just like any couples together all the time, we have our moments and we get through it. And we have 3 dogs too, so that's always good time. Busy stuff.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
let me take another question that's somewhat related. It's also about the balance. This is more the opposite of David's experience. The question may be a woman saying, I'm happy in retirement, but my husband is lost. He sits on the sofa streaming movies all day, and I think he's depressed. What can I do? Is this one in your court, Marianne?
Yes, it is, right, Smeckley. And that's unfortunately not uncommon, especially among men. And it part of it happens because of the lack of comfort that they have in creating social interactions, as David is comfortable doing. And so what happens often is has been called the retired husband syndrome, where a man depends on his wife to organize all of his social life, which creates a lot of conflict often in a relationship, because the wife probably has her own social activities that she's happy to do and doesn't want to be responsible for his happiness, if you will, or responsible for organizing his entire life. And so that can create some real tension. The issue of not having the motivation to get up off of the couch and do anything. So David, you said when you're feeling that way, you make yourself do something even though you don't want to do it. And when people don't have that self-motivation to do it, it can become a very dangerous situation. It often leads to not only lack of exercise and lack of mental stimulation, and therefore your brain isn't stimulated and you're not as interesting to talk to, as well as your brain, it's a use it or lose it function for sure. And so there are risks for people who choose to sit and do, vegetate too much of the time. Great to do it some of the time. Heck, that's the way that this time of our life is supposed to be. But it's definitely a risk when it's too much. And so what do you do about that? I can tell you about a client. I often tell this story in workshops. So we'll call him Rich, and I'll just give you the thumbnail version of his story. You said, David, something interesting. You said sometimes people, it's not their choice to retire, and that was Rich's problem. He was an aviator for 50 years and was running a medical evacuation unit for a large county here in Florida, where I used to live. And it was shut down with 24 hours notice. I mean, bang, done, no notice, gone, and he's forced to retire. He was 68 at the time, not ready, not thinking about it, nothing. And he sat there for, almost a year before we met, and he couldn't get out of bed in the morning. He was seriously depressed. And the solution to that, and I would hope it would be for other people who have that lack of motivation, is to work either with someone or a professional, or read my book about exploring things like, what are your interests? And in Rich's case, that discussion led to him remembering that he used to like to write, and therefore he took a creative writing course, which led to another creative writing course. Long story short, this is 4 years later, he's now published 2 books, very involved in the community, because his books led him to speaking engagements to promote his book, which led him to meet people, which led him to join organizations.
Wow.
And it sort of snowballed from not being able, he said, when we met, he had trouble reading the newspaper as his accomplishment for the day. But when he was able to connect with something that was interesting and meaningful to him, then it all changed around, it all turned around. And so anybody whose husband is stuck on the couch like that, my suggestion would be, get going in terms of exploring what his interests are to get him motivated to do something. Because often men don't have time when they're working so hard to develop hobbies. So it's not everybody that has a hobby that they can naturally go to. And so it's very important to, at that point, develop a retirement lifestyle plan, as Susan was talking about.
I must add that, we're fortunate that, I'm 71 and very healthy too. So health is an issue, with retirement. So as of now, that's a plus for me. It isn't for everybody, And one of the things that are, this thing about aging, one of the things that happen is that we lose people. We lose our parents, we lose some friends and so forth. So that's some difficulty there, but it's, I guess, part of life. So, but I would say doing what you can to stay healthy. I work out, I'm active and all that. And hopefully that continues, and I continue to have good health for quite a while.
Well, yes, and good health is definitely a gift, no question about it. But it's also something that we have a lot of control over, much more control over than the medical profession ever used to think. There's a very interesting book called Live Long, Die Short, which was written by a man named Dr. Roger Landry. And it's based on some research that was done in the 1990s about what was really causing people to age successfully. And the outcome of it was very surprising to the medical community. It found that 70% of our physical aging and 50% of our mental aging is absolutely influenced by our lifestyle, by the lifestyle choices that we make every day. And so the guy that sits on the couch all day and doesn't have any motivation to do anything, is he going to have trouble aging? Yeah, he is. And are people like you who are active and engaged in volunteer and social engagements and exercise, are you going to age successfully? A whole lot more easily than the guy that sits on the couch. Really? That's for sure.
Well, this is that's great to know. I mean, it's great to know from some professionals that I'm doing something right. So that sort of made my day.
Well, you are. Another approach to the retirement blues that seems to be tempting to many people is to go back to work. And in fact, there's been a lot of talk about how older people are very welcome in the job market right now because of the Great Resignation, and how that's created more openings, and maybe employers are looking a second time at the idea of older people who they might have thought had aged out. Is that a good choice, or how do you know it's a good choice?
It really depends. Susan, okay if I take this one?
No, yeah, please go ahead.
Again, it's like Susan's answer earlier. It depends on the person, and it depends on the reason that you want to do it. Now, we know that approximately a quarter of the people in both US and Canada right now that are, quote, retired, back to the question of what is the definition of retirement anymore, do have full or part-time jobs. And we know from solid research that was done by Merrill Lynch that the people go back to work for one of four reasons. There's sort of four categories: because they're driven, they just absolutely love working, they get a great deal of personal satisfaction from doing that. That's about a quarter of the people. There are people who go back to work because they love the social engagement. They miss the interaction that they had when they were doing whatever they did for a living, and that is much more important to them than the money. Other people are just want to make a difference in the world. I mean, I can tell you that's why Susan and I are doing what we're doing right now, for that exact reason. And then there's about 28% that do it because they have to. So if you're going back to work because you absolutely can't figure out anything else to do with your life, and you're sort of escaping that question of what is it that makes you happy, what is it that makes you an alive, vital human being, then I would say, let's talk about it some more. But for a lot of people, it's a very fulfilling and rewarding situation. And some different research that was done said among people who were working, said that the experience now for them is very different, because most of the time people have flexibility. They're doing it more because they want to do it than that they have to do it.
Right.
And as a result, they find it to be much more rewarding. And typically they choose less stressful jobs than some of us had for the 40 years of our career. And so therefore, when that's the experience, you come home a little bit more energized and engaged with life. And so from that perspective, work can be a great solution. But it's not for everybody, for sure.
I'm going to ask Jeff to chime in on this one, because he seems to still be working, and I want to see how he fits into those categories.
Sure, and I'll go ahead and turn on the video so y'all can see that it's actually it's actually a real person, not a robot or something. Robocall, whatever they call them. Yeah, it's. I think someone mentioned along the way, it's interesting because it is so wide open. I mean, what does it really mean? Retirement. The whole concept, and and I'll share on my personal situation. I've been widowed for over 20 years, so I had to make the decision over 20 years ago, and fortunately, my business allowed me to be as busy as I wanted to be. I could be busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which I did for probably about 20 years, and just lived it. For lack of something better, I would refer to myself as a geriatric care manager, and help families make decisions about their older loved ones and how they were going to live the rest of their lives, whether it's going to be at home in a facility. And so, I just fulfilled a lot of avenues there. So it was very purpose driven, and also allowed me to be sort of the entrepreneur that I've always been. And so I'm personally driven by the challenge. So the whole idea of retiring and stopping who I am just didn't even factor in. So yes, I have slowed down. I'm slowly forced with the pandemic, or anyway, brought everything home. So I'm working from home. I don't necessarily take any new clients, but I've had clients for many, many years, and they're likely to outlive me at this rate, I guess. But so I've still been able to take care of folks, and that really has been a very much a blessing for me personally. Sometimes I do feel like that it would be, I do have to find ways to slow down because I'm always, my mind has gotten me going in 1,000 directions. On a personal basis, I'll share that my son and I have just purchased a vacation home about 200 miles from here that is requiring a lot of time and effort. And so I've taken on that challenge of fixing that up. And so when I'm there, I'm really, other than the fact that I still have my phone, I still have my laptop, it is forcing me to slow down a little bit, which is probably good. But, I think the whole idea of retirement is so personally driven by individuals' life circumstances. And I think more and more we're finding that there is no ideal path, for that is similar across the board. I can see where, some individuals that would have absolutely nothing to do would, you do sort of kind of wonder what you're going to do tomorrow. You had mentioned, aside from all this, then I move into a gated community, not necessarily with this purpose in mind, but what's evolved is, the average age of our residents here is probably a good 75 to 80 years of age. It's certainly individual homes. And again, being as much of a student of aging, it's been very interesting just from a perspective to see how individuals are, approaching the whole aging factor. So I'm driven by that challenge, and it's like, how do I get them out of the house? How do we get some exercise? And that type of deal. So it's again just defining some purpose, in life, and keep moving. That's what's kind of working for me. So.
And that sounds, first of all, what you do is so beneficial, so needed, a very, very valuable gift that you're giving to the people that you work for, because so many people struggle with that. So I applaud you for that, for sure.
Sure. Well, thank you.
You what is retirement? I think we were before, and the question is, the old definition doesn't work. The word doesn't even work. But we don't have a substitute for it. Susan often calls it rewirement, but it really is. It's what you're looking at, this third of your life, and it's all about how do you want to live it. You're no longer bound by this conscripts of what other people think, or supporting a family, or any of those other things that made you have to do the things you did before. Now it's, how do I want to fill these days? What do I want to do? And my goodness gracious, if what you want to do is a passion for you of helping other people in a very valuable way, then why not? The fact that you're slowing down to be able to enjoy other aspects of your life is the important part of that. This project with your son sounds fantastic, not just because of it getting you away a little bit from just your work, but also the time that you're spending with your son and the way that you're going to enjoy it. That's just such a positive contribution to this part of your life. And so the challenge for you, I think, as much as anything, is to keep your life filled with things in addition to the work that you love so much, so that it's a little bit broader, because you have the flexibility of being able to do that if you wish to. So the challenge is, what other exciting thing do you want to add to your already rewarding life?
Yeah, I think too, what's interesting is it's so much of this you really don't think about as you're going through your career. It's like, what am I going to do? That type of deal. So in a lot of ways, I feel like that an individual gets to a point in life, and they're almost sort of forced to sort of tweak what they have been doing, or at least their thought processes, and really to be able to have the ability to do that. And I think that's where so many times you will hear of people who go home and they're just miserable because they've just always gone to the office and that's all that they've ever done. And so, the opportunities to be driven by those things that have worked in your earlier days but how can you, bring that forward for your retirement, for lack of something better, years? I think it is a real challenge, because certainly for our generation, baby boomers, the medical profession says we're going to be around for a while. And how are we going to sort of define that whole segment of our life, which could be, a good 20, 25 years. I think it is good, just like you're doing here, Don, is to give folks an opportunity to listen and to really become, educate themselves to beyond possibly where they are at their juncture in life. I don't know if any of that makes any sense.
No, it made perfect sense. Thank you.
That was good, Jeff. I want to add something else that should be done. One of the biggest regrets of my life is that I didn't ask my father enough questions, and he died in 1981. I mean, he lived through the Depression. He was deployed in the South Pacific. He became an OBGYN, and there's so many things that I'm curious about that I can't ask him. And there are other people in the family I would know, but they're gone too, about certain things that happen in their life. So it's becoming important to me that my children know a lot about my life, because I don't want them to have that regret later on. Why didn't I ask my father this or that? So
How are you going to go about doing that for your children, David?
how should I?
Well, I can chime in on that.
I mean,
because-
will they be actually interested in sitting down with me? Maybe not, but then they'll regret it later on. So,
Well, I can
Go
chime in
ahead,
on
Susan.
that because I have a personal experience with it, in that my aunt, who just died 2 years ago at the age of 97, was the last of the survivors of her siblings, of 4 siblings.
yeah.
And she said, it's up to me now to document our family history, which included being Holocaust survivors, relocating all over the world, 4 different siblings ending up on different continents. And she felt that it was important that she write and document the family history. And she did it just for the family. What happened was that the Holocaust Museum in Washington, she lived in Carter Rock Springs, you might know it, not too far from where you are, David. And she was discovered by the Holocaust Museum, and then they invited her to be a guide at the Holocaust Museum at the age of probably 78. And her book then became a bestseller through the museum. And she had no intention, she was just writing it for the family. But it's a fabulous chronicle. In fact, I got it out the other day because, like you, I wished I'd asked more questions of her and of my parents.
Yeah.
And I got the book out, and it's just full of stories and details about the family history. So personally, I think that one of the best things you can do is document it, because if you try and sit down with kids, I know when, I was subjected to, let's sit down and I'll tell you my life, that there were times I just wasn't interested. But now at this stage in life and along the way, I have been very interested in where I came from and, what the values were that shaped my life and so on. So I think writing a book, it doesn't have to be a big fancy thing, doesn't even have to be published, but just documenting it somehow. We have the advantage now of having photographs, of being able to document things through photography as well as words.
Well, Susan, do you know of any like template plan that is maybe on the market to help you do that?
No, but I can contribute what my husband's doing. Because he's pushed by me, I will tell you, because of the same motivation, wishing to know more about my family. And he has been taking classes at the Oehser Lifelong Learning Center, which are you familiar with, Ali? Oehser? It's a national organization that supports colleges and universities to enact adult learning programs, lifelong learning. And so many colleges and universities have what's called the Oehser Lifelong Learning Program. And the University of Alabama at Huntsville happens to have one. And so he's been taking a class which is specifically about telling your life story.
Really?
And so for every class, he has to write a vignette about some part of his life, and then gets up and shares it with the class. And my intention is, once he collects all these stories, is to get him to read them in front of a recorder, his computer, his phone, whatever. Goodness gracious, it's easy, so that his children can have not only the written part of it, and again, it's a couple of pages on each story, and it's not anything structured like Susan was saying. But then if he records it, they also have the option of listening to it and hearing his voice. I wish more than anything right now, I had something with my father's voice on it, even if it was just a recording from a telephone of leave a message. But I have nothing.
Well, I'm fortunate that on my mother's side, my uncle did a whole history of my mother's side of the family. It was Ephraim Putz,
right?
Ephraim, and he actually we have a charitable foundation where the whole family meets, and so he actually presented the thing, and I have that recorded. I recorded the whole thing, but there, where I come in, from 1950 to today, there's a lot of things. Look at people our age have been through a lot. We've all been through, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the crazy stuff in the 60s. I was at Woodstock, and, and my son wants my Woodstock tickets. I said, yeah, you get them. So anyway, and then there's more. So it's one of those things where I just got to get started. It's one of those things where, oh my God, I don't want to do that. You just get started, and then it comes along. But thanks for,
my husband doesn't like to write or anything, and so he found these little vignettes of little, something that happened specifically, or a time that he remembered, and doing them in small chunks makes it much easier to do. It's not like it's this formidable, I'm writing a book.
Well, that's what you're right, and it's hard for me, but that's what any big project is. You just do it in chunks.
Yeah.
It's what they call the salami technique. You could never eat a whole huge salami, but you eat little chunks of it. So.
Oh, I like that.
It's a good metaphor, isn't it?
I just want to mention the other side of this process. When my wife and I wanted to get the stories from her grandparents, we arranged a visit so that we were, in her parents' house, and the grandparents came in, and we sat them down, and we said, so Jenny, Cy, can you tell us a little bit about the old times, when you first came to this country? And they said, I know, you want to talk about roots, forget roots. They wasn't so good. Don't want to talk about it.
Did she always have a Yiddish accent, or?
Yeah.
That's one thing I'd like to learn Yiddish. I should have paid attention when I was growing up.
I'll share just something that has just started happening in my case with the 5 grandkids, and they've all been pretty young, and I've always thought it would be sort of neat for the day that they could actually manage their own calls, their own phone or their own videos and all that. Because I would tell my sons, I said, what's going to happen is you're going to tell them some days he'll call you granddad or something, and they're going to say, do I have to, But anyway, aside from that, so I've taken my oldest one, who just turned 14, and my phone, I guess it's just something that Google does. It will pop up these pictures from 5 or 6 years ago. It's like, this happened 5 or 6 years ago, and I'll remember it and all that. And so I'm sending my oldest grandson, I'll send him that picture, and I'll ask him, I said, do you remember this? And I'll get him to, and of course it's all, it's texting, because I hadn't quite figured out, how we're going to get verbal and conversation, to any generation anymore. But anyway, I'm sort of forcing him to tell me what he remembers from this picture. And it's very interesting because he'll come back to me, he'll say, did I look like that? I sure have changed, and it's only been 5 years, so it's getting him to be reflective back to me. And I guess there's a way I sort of can capture those texts, I guess, and maybe formulate the idea of putting that book together that y'all are talking about.
Guys, I'll be right back. The arrangement we have, I feed the dogs at night, and I want to make sure that my wife took my job. So I'll be right back.
All right. And while you're out, I wanted to pose another question to our guests, because we talked about the importance. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind muting till we bring you in, thanks. We talked about the importance of having a clear purpose when you are in this stage of life. My question is, how do you figure out what it is? How do you go about that process of discovering it? One of you want to take
Go
that
ahead,
one?
Marianne, you take that one.
Sure. I've based my work and purpose on the work of a man named Richard Leider. And he wrote the book, The Power of Purpose.
Yes.
Do you know of his latest book called, the name of it is, Who Do I Want to Be When I Grow Old?
Oh, I do know.
Or what do I want to be?
Yes.
Yes, and it's really good. It hasn't been out that long. It's very good. Well, Richard's formula, if you will, is gifts plus passion plus value equals purpose. And what he means by that is gifts being, what is it that you're good at, that you just sort of naturally do well, that you get lost when you're in the flow of it, that you just love to do. So what are those things? The passion part is what you just truly love. I mean, you love to do it. You get personal enjoyment out of it. And the third thing is value. And his definition of that was, what is it, who would value from you doing something that is related to what you do well and what you love doing? And so that would be purpose. I've added to that to say that it must also be something that you value. So, for example, the last segment of my career, I was in market research, and I truly loved working with corporations and helping them to formulate marketing strategies and helping them design the kind of information that they needed in order to inform those decisions. Loved doing that. It also meant that I had to travel a lot. At that time, we were raising 2 of our grandchildren. So as much as I loved it, the travel took me away from being home. And so therefore, it was a contradiction to what I valued. And so it has to be something that's of, both ways. But he also, Richard on his website has something called calling cards. And I used to teach purpose workshops, and we used Richard's calling cards. And it's kind of like it feels like a game. You sort the cards into piles, and I won't go into the details of that. But what it forces you to do is to narrow all these kind of possibilities down to 5 cards with 5 different things. And of those, you have to pick the one that's most important. And these are, a whole deck of cards. And so it forces you to sort of make choices about several things that you do like. And in the end, you come up with a grain of a thought of something that you can then, when you talk about it, say, how can I put this into action? What would I want? What would I need to do? And for whom would I need to do it in order for them to benefit and me to feel like I'm making a contribution?
That's great. That's helpful. And Richard Leider, if you don't know the name, David and Jeff, is Leider.
Okay.
And he's all over Google.
Yeah, he's got a couple of really good YouTube videos.
There's so much stuff out there. You get information overload.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about your book, Marianne. I'd like to give us a source where we can find that.
Oh, thanks. It's on Amazon, and it's called Your Happiness Portfolio. I can't even say it's my own book. Your Happiness Portfolio for Retirement. It's not about the money. And that means it's not that retirement isn't about the money. That's what you and Susan helped so many people accumulate. It's about, the book isn't about the money.
Did you and Susan write that together?
No, I wrote it before we knew each other. And
Yeah.
the book was born from the fact that I've been doing this work for 10 years. And as I studied, first of all, relationship coaching, but then retirement coaching, developed a process that I have helped many, many people through, like this man, Rich, to construct a plan that's going to give them what kind of activities do I get pleasure and meaning from, and make sure that those kinds of activities are what you build your life around. Happiness portfolio being the 8 non-financial asset classes of your life: relationship, family and friends, self-development, giving back, all of those kinds of things. So the book is literally the process that I took people through, because I realized that not everybody would benefit from or be willing and open to working with a retirement coach. So I literally documented the process that I use. So it's got all the exercises and everything else, but it also has the logic behind it, the kinds of things that you need to think about for a number of aspects of retirement, including the 8 asset classes, if you will.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I know time's getting short, but there's another thing, the dynamic that that happens and you have to resolve is that if you have a spouse or a partner, they have their own world. Okay, Judith is retired and she is so involved in so many things she was a high-level social worker with the Baltimore County DSS, and she's on so many boards and everything, and she's got a big world with that. And my world was a financial world, and sports world, golf, and many other things. But you got to find something that you have in common. You really
That's
do.
very true. Very
Yes.
important. Very important.
Marianne calls it me time and we time.
Okay.
Right.
And that balance is different for every couple, but it's important.
sure
So it's
is.
important to figure out what that balance is for you.
Right. So.
Since we are reaching the end of the hour, I did want to give Susan and Marianne a little chance to talk about what retirement coaches actually do and how they might be able to help somebody in retirement, whether we individually are the ones who need the help or others that we know. So can I come back to Susan?
Yeah, so retirement coaches are a specialized breed, I guess, of advisors that help people plan the non-financial side of their retirement. So just like David, you and I did in our professional careers, we help people with the money side. Retirement lifestyle coaching deals primarily with the non-financial side. Now, we're members, Marianne and I are both members of the Retirement Coaches Association, and we're both graduates of their Retirement Coaches program with the Certified Professional Retirement Coach designation. And with our colleagues, a number of them are maybe more unstructured in terms of how they deal with clients, like come talk to me and it's more like a conversation. What Marianne and I have done is evolved a process, a defined process, which takes people through from the very beginning, which is a deep dive on knowing yourself, which starts with an assessment that we use that provides people with deeper insight into their makeup, their behavior, and so on, than they can figure out on their own. And then using the exercises that Marianne's book that she talked about, we do a deep dive discovery where people go through these exercises. And the third step of our process really is the clarity matrix, where we put together the results of the assessment plus the results from the exercises to develop the clarity matrix that then forms the basis of the happiness portfolio, which are these 8 areas of life that we discuss with each of our clients. And it's really up to them. It's just like a financial portfolio. You may have some asset class overweighted or underweighted, but ideally there's balance and diversification in a life portfolio the way there is in a financial portfolio. And then because a lot of people often have the best of intentions to do things, but they actually never get around to doing it, the 5th step of our process is what we call a rewirement check-in, which is following up with people over a period of months to make sure that they actually execute, that they said, when they said, I think I'd like to volunteer, and this might be the organization I'm interested in. Have they actually contacted the group? If they're interested through self-development in taking a course, have they signed up for that course? They said they want to spend more time with family and friends. Well, you know, did you have that dinner party? Did you arrange that weekend? So we become a little bit like I would call us personal trainers that help you with your exercise program. We're kind of like that when it comes to helping them with their lifestyle plan. So our belief is that a retirement coach is really somebody that can do things with you that would be very difficult to do on your own. For example, just using the financial advisor analogy, it's not very many people that can successfully do their own financial plan and manage their money. There's certainly nobody I know that fills their own teeth and does their own, hygienic cleaning. There's not too many people cut their own hair or fix their own car. So why should going through this major once in a lifetime transition be something that you tackle on your own? So we think that this is an emerging field of retirement coaching that's just starting. We're just scratching the surface of what we believe will be a bigger industry, a bigger recognized service in the future that people can say, well, of course I wouldn't retire without talking to a retirement coach, because it saves a lot of the trial and error, or worse still, the downhill spiral that some people find themselves in if they don't have a plan and execute on that plan for retirement. So we're big believers in obviously using retirement coaches, and we're very much on a mission and with passion to help people make this the best time of their life.
Okay.
I'd like to mention real quickly, Susan, as I was, before I was retiring, what Morgan Stanley was doing, they were putting non-financial issues in the retirement planning, like what we've been talking about tonight. So, being a retirement planner financially, we were doing the stuff that we were talking tonight too, touching on it, not this extensive and not as professional as you two are, but it is entering the financial world too.
And correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but I believe that a lot of the financial services firms are linking themselves with retirement coaches and
Yes, and we are doing that with a number of, I would say, more individual advisors at this point, although we do have some organizations that are that we're starting to work with as well. But when one of our big pushes is with financial advisors to first get them to understand that if they really want to be holistic financial advisors, their job doesn't finish just with planning the money. Right. And that ultimately, to do a proper financial plan, you better know what the lifestyle and the activities of the person are. And then you can integrate that and really do an accurate financial plan and manage the money accordingly.
Okay. It's happening. And the emotional side of investing always fascinated me, because Susan, that people, not necessarily want to follow your advice. And, when they do it on their own, or they give you instructions, they're hurting themselves. So there's a whole thing. And then there's a dynamic between the husband and the wife and the other family. That. I may be off topic. I apologize.
Oh, but that's why you married a social worker.
Yeah, well, she's a social worker. My son's a social worker. My daughter's a social worker. My daughter-in-law's a social worker. I'm the evil Wall Street guy.
Well, you're well protected. We're running to the clock out. I wanted to ask David and Jeff if you had any final questions for our experts while we have them right here.
I just want to say that no question, but this was a fantastic thing you put together, Don.
Thank you.
And Marianne and Susan, you were validated a lot of things that I've been going through, and I've learned new things from you too that I'm going to put to use.
That's great.
Yes, yeah, and I appreciate knowing that it is an evolving area, because there again, we've got this whole segment of a person's life that is going to be in this new phase that if they have not thought about it, just, where things are going to go. So I think there is a tremendous need to educate and to begin the conversations. So I appreciate being involved.
Well,
Thank you, Don, for putting this together. You're doing phenomenal stuff.
Thank you, David and Jeff. Thank you, Suzanne and Marianne. It was very enjoyable and very good information. Appreciate it.
Okay, Don, I'll see you around.
All right. Good.
We got to do lunch again.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
The recording.